heading towards El Centro. There's a lot of walking I figured out in this city, and mopeds might be a good idea. It's pretty hot. I think it's hotter today than yesterday, even in the middle of winter. Kind of humid. They're really friendly though, honestly. See this condo? Man, I wish I had that kind of balance. Alright, so I think we finally recovered from night one at Tulum, the Locus Music Festival, and we're gearing up to head to the cenote here, this beautiful kind of swimming bar type situation in an ecological area where it's so sensitive you can't wear sunscreen. They sell like a special organic sunscreen. These wires are pretty gnarly. Like I could like reach up and touch them if I wanted. Honestly though, it is really nice to get out of the US bubble after so long of kind of just being in that environment, that mental headspace. It's reminding me of visiting Manila, although I will say parts of LA have a similar feel to this, with vendors on the streets, and you hear quite a bit of Spanish down there just as you walk through the area. And some of these, like cheap retailers, are similar to what you see in downtown LA actually. All right, my Mexican friend from Canada, Bernie, told me about this place. Here we are at the fantastic Radio Tulum. It's got a good vibe about it, and you can tell they know their broadcasting chops.
How's it going? Jeff DeVoe from Los Angeles, and this is my beautiful wife, Brenda.
Mexicana.
Yeah? Eres Mexicana de Puebla. She's amazing. So Locus is one of the biggest festivals for drum and bass solely.
On this side?
Oh, over here on this side of the pond, right? Exactly. Drum and bass for me has been a very intricate part of my life. I kind of got into it after maybe about 98 or so, and I went from the punk scene into the electronic scene and really navigated towards drum and bass. It was for me the closest thing to bebop and jazz, in that if you think about some of the old work that Miles Davis did, it's very simple, 3 chords, but all the emotion, and it's the same thing for me with drum and bass. So I got into drum and bass, I became a DJ, I produced, and I basically made a family in Los Angeles, in this town that I never grew up in. I'm from 29 Palms, shout out to the Deuce. And it, for me, has really created a sense of the world being much smaller and being much more just incredible. The fact that we have this family anywhere you go. If you choose to go to Scotland, find the drum and bass heads, you got family. If you choose to go to Tokyo, find the drum and bass heads, you got family. And that's what it means to me. And then, when we first got together, she wasn't into drum and bass, but she went out to a couple of clubs and really...
Respect.
Yeah, you wanted to respect. And then she started train spotting tunes before I did, and I was like...
Will you marry me?
Will you marry me? Immediately? So, thank you, Locus Tulum, for doing this, and I'm 100% hooked on this festival. I'm gonna be here every year.
I know you didn't really live in Mexico too much, but as someone who's from Mexico, to what extent do you feel like it's a bougie gringo festival in the middle of the jungle versus?
I don't feel that at all. Just like Jeff said, I think that the drum and bass community is so approachable, and I don't perceive it as high class.
Except for the dude at the bathroom last night.
Okay, whatever.
At Tatich.
There's a couple, always a bad.
There's always bad apples.
Bad apples. There you go. Yeah. But generally speaking, I think what I really appreciated about drum and bass after I got introduced to the scene from Jeff is that it's very eclectic. In Los Angeles, it's very diverse, it's very inclusive, it's very positive, everyone's very welcoming and nice. So I see that same sort of behavior from the people coming to visit Mexico, and I'm just so grateful that it's on this side and we don't have to go all the way to Europe to go be with community. So I hope this continues, so it's much closer to home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just the other day in Santa Cruz, I met a guy who used to actually bring Metalhead's records to Tulum back in the day.
Holy shit, that's crazy.
Because he's like a junglist from Canada or whatever.
Whoa.
And basically, he was saying that like, it's just changed a lot. There's a lot more condos now.
Yeah.
There's, from my standpoint, I see like, this is pretty legit and underground here, but a lot of...
Most places are not like this.
Yeah,
this place is definitely underground. It's got that underground energy.
Yeah.
I do, look, having gone to many different resort cities, I do feel a little bit of sadness about Tulum. It does feel a little bit like we're encroaching on the jungle. We're sacrificing natural space to have these sort of scenes. So I do feel a little bit of sadness for that.
Yeah. The other day we were driving around and we're looking at condos that were unfinished. And
lots of construction.
We're thinking like, what happens like with that land? Like, does it do they get fined for ruining the jungle
if it
and not
doesn't
finishing something?
Yeah.
Like, so if it in that aspect it feels a little bad, because if somebody doesn't finish a project, it's really just like ruining the land, right?
Yeah.
To what extent do you feel like Locus Music Festival is contributing to that, or else just working in harmony with something else? Like I actually don't really have an opinion yet. I'm just kind of,
well, I feel a little conflicted because I do think that all of us are every time we come here, we're contributing to the demand for more condos and more expansion
more
into
Airbnbs.
the jungle. I haven't had too many conversations with locals, but my little conversations with locals have been like, it's fine.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe it is creating jobs. I'm not really sure. But I do feel a little uneasy about how much the rapid, everywhere you look, there's construction, right?
Yeah.
So there's clearly rapid development. So I wonder about the environmental impact of that sort of growth.
And
I do feel like a little bit guilty about that.
Yeah, and like how much, and this is just me talking, not knowing anything about the local environment, but like how much are local officials willing to bend the rules to make a new development? And so that's concerning, but what can you do? Like, I don't know, like maybe in the end, should we stop festivals like this and just have them in towns that are already developed? Or, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
I'm interested to see when I go to the cenote for whatever's left there.
Yeah.
We did sleep in, rested up, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But just to see for myself how I feel about how the interaction between these sensitive ecosystems are and the drum and bass community, because I think if any electronic music community could be sensitive to preserving the jungle, it would be the jungle community.
I agree.
But that's not a foregone conclusion, so we'll see what happens.
It's an assumption, right? But the one thing that I think is positive out of this experience, especially for Americans, because we're a lot that tend to not travel, outside of our state.
Well, it's expensive to get to the Europe. It's expensive.
Yeah, but the fact that people are coming out of their comfort zones, coming to a new country, interacting with other people who they don't normally interact with, they're getting more of a sense of empathy, and so I think that in itself is a positive.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'm always, as a Mexican, I'm always grateful for people that get to travel to Mexico that are not discouraged by headlines that it's violent, everyone's gonna die, right? I think I do get encouraged when people are willing to come to Mexico because it's a beautiful place and there's so much to explore and
beautiful people.
And everybody coming from the States, everybody knows that there's anti-immigrant rhetoric. And all immigrants are Mexican, to the
and
narrow
everyone's going
minds
to get
of many
kidnapped.
Americans. Yeah, so I do appreciate anything that expands your expectations of what your close neighbor is. I appreciate that. I appreciate those opportunities.
Hi, my name is Mandeep Bhatia. Been in Tulum for 8 years now, but I've been coming for 21 years. Every time we used to come, we would stay on the beach in those days, and everybody would be like, why are we going back to the godforsaken America. I became a documentary filmmaker. I left America a few times already. Made a documentary on trying to find Leonard Cohen in Montreal, and then went to LA to shoot a documentary on gangs because I wanted to study violence. And then my favorite documentary was made for the head of the ethics department at Harvard, in Lawrence Lessig, who did the book called Rip Remix. And I was trying to find nobility, found Shepard Fairey, and he was chasing down the Associated Press. And most of my documentaries are for my own studies.
How did you end up making the transition to Tulum, and what was special about that place at that time, and how did that lead you into broadcasting?
So I made these films and arrived at Tulum after a 2-year hiatus, and I was like, fuck it, why go back? And at that time, I didn't think it was wrapped up in the post-New Ages world of Eckhart Tolle and yoga and wellness that had no backbone. At that time, we really, because of our experience here, it was camaraderie, it was openness, it was magical.
What was magical about it?
There are places in the world that are harmonious and send out this sort of energy. Sound like a post-New Ages asshole again, but it's true. There's this place the Mayans believe was the where the pea was pulled out, where the whole world was pulled out, and you could feel that. This is one of those centers. In India, traveling through the mountains, or India anywhere you travel except for the cities, you feel an imminent silence. So if you want a soundtrack, you just feel at peace. You feel that you can think. I tried opening the bar and I got screwed three times. Once from my Mexican partner who stole everything. Then the couple who owned the hotel got divorced, so my portion of the place fell into the wife's hands. It was a big mess. And the last, I got one place finally finished, and it was the perfect place, right on the beach in the center, which is now Rosa Negra, who's taken over Tulum pretty much, the Rosa Negra group. We had this 4-meter tall screens and a 40-person bar with the best partner I could have. It was a great bartender. My studio was finished right below the spiral staircase. And then they took the hotels.
Who took the hotels? What happened?
Government, business owners, the Ejido is a big mess in Tulum, and you want a secure title, and a lot of places don't have a secure title, because in Mexico there's something called a Ejido, and the land was given to local farmers who then turned around and sold it at one point, or people came here and took it 30, 40 years ago, so there's no rightful owner. So they can fake paperwork and say, no, we own this property, and basically 17 hotels were taken over, and where my bar was one of the hotels.
As part of the development that was going on, is that fair to say?
Part of progress, as a part of seeing that there's a shitload of money, they could. Some say it was the Monterey brothers in line with the governor and some judges. Now there's still a fight going on. Some of the hotel, one or two may have win the fight, but to get these people out is impossible. In fact, my hotel owner said he'd won the court case, but it's impossible to get Rosa Negra Group, which owns 30 properties now, to get them out. And there's another takeover that we're hearing rumors of being taken over in the reserve that Trump tried to buy at one point, and then Disneyland was involved, and all kinds of shit happens.
That makes me wonder, not to jump ahead, but where we're at in this moment.
Well, let me just tell you why Radio Tulum was born. I had a choice to turn bitter and say, oh, the world is fucking crazy, but I wouldn't give them that, I couldn't give them that pleasure. So I said, you know what, I'm going to give you more. So instead of Radio Mandeep, which is what I had, it wasn't a radio station, I just loved radio, and I said to myself, well, you got no money, and you want to be a filmmaker, so why don't we start to listen? And in my apartment, always just loved Radio Tulum as a brand, as a name, you know. And I loved radio, or I loved conversation. So in my 2-room apartment, I started Radio Tulum and started a radio station. Full-on radio station doing 24/7 programming. And all of a sudden, a lot of people started to show up. I mean, this was 8 years ago, 7.5 years ago. We started live streaming then, we started podcasting. I mean, we were way ahead of the curve, you know, before all this shit has just come into being after COVID. And a lot of people started showing up, just because people wanted to participate in something. And musicians, artists, everybody. There's 40 people in my apartment on any given day playing stuff. And then we said, oh fuck, you know, let's try to find a place. And a friend of mine, a musician friend of mine, said, oh, come to my house, and there's a little nook that you can have. And I'm not a nook kind of guy, you know, it's either go big or go home. So I started looking, and somebody that I knew from the beach said my uncle has a property in town, and it was this property. And it was the drug den of Tulum. Basically, 2 cartel people were sitting here, and you come here to get drugs. It was a pigsty. And the landlord was addicted to crack, so they were serving him crack. But somehow the landlord wanted to get out of the situation and signed a contract to me for 5 years. But then the cartel wasn't leaving. And the landlord wasn't leaving. And so I had to call the head of the cartel, whom I had met once or twice, and tell him that, listen, I have a contract, and you know, I'm doing something good. And he was a reasonable guy. He wasn't cartel as we hear cartel. And he listened to me. And I said, the one thing that I offered him, I said, listen, let me help you find another hostel, because at that time there was no bathrooms in the rooms. It was just so nasty. But you know, I've got something important for Tulum, and we're doing something really grand, and we really need the place. And he agreed, and he left. And then the landlord was another story. Anyway, we tore everything down and rebuilt it.
I mean, I've had situations where I've had to nervously call my, you know, the owner of the radio station where I was doing a show at or whatever. I can't imagine like being like the head of the cartel, like.
But you know, we've been blessed like that, because we always have monikers every year underneath Radio Tulum. In that moment, the moniker was, how do we, the generosity of spirit. That was what I was going for, was how do I maintain my generosity of spirit as the world tries to take every piece of me. And that's how this place was built, under generosity of spirit. And in the first year, it quickly became a temple to expression. And that's why people love it, and people talk about it all over the world, you know, because we never do it for the money. You know, this place has never made any money, and we are struggling all the time. I go to work in America to fund it. And this place, I truly believe, is a temple to expression. In its existence, it's gone through many iterations. I mean, during construction, you know, I came from the event background, so we had tons of events, but open events, and it was the only place that really was doing anything consequential. And through its iterations in the last couple of years, it has become, the moniker has been of consequence. You know, now that we've given up Tulum to progress, and progress, no matter what, you can't stop. And that's your earlier question on move into the future. I can't say that Tulum itself has changed, but progress has definitely, what is the great Joni Mitchell quote? Paved paradise and built a parking lot. And now it's like Ocean Drive on that beach property. But you know, you can't avoid progress. Do I still believe Tulum exists? And it's, for me, personally, one of the things I realized in the last year and a half was that while I wasn't looking, while I was doing something by the artists, for the artists, by the artists, for the people, another moniker. And Hear the Love is really our tagline. Hear the love, you gotta hear the love. While I was in Looking, I became what I was meant to be. I became a super incredible poet, well rooted in my own being, and it's given me so much while I was looking. So there's another way inside, which is when you're not looking, and when you do something for the larger good, you create. I told my mother not too long ago, if anybody knows, the Sikhs have what is called a Gurdwara, where anybody can enter it, no matter what religion, what creed, what status you are. All four, northeast, south, west, have doors, and you can enter, and you will be fed, and you will be housed. And I told my mother lovingly that you're the mother of a son who has built a new Gurdwara, so to speak, where if anybody needs anything, they are always welcome. And that's why we become the artist space. That's why we are. We always said we were an independent voice. We don't give a fuck about even in some extent to the audience, because audience do not know what they want. You have to give them what they need, and you have to stand strong about this conviction. And I'm not saying I have reached that epoch. Nice to see you, brother. But we try every day. And that's why I talk about the post-New Agers. They don't understand. They're swallowing up experiences in such a way, the audience, the people, that they don't have a deeper understanding of what they're trying to accomplish. Radio! Shh!
So talk to me a little bit about the history of electronic music as you've seen it in Tulum, and the extent to which drum and bass music does or does not fit into that, and because that's...
I'm the wrong person to ask these questions, because I have my own cultural historian bent on what electronic music is and has done.
I'd love to hear it. Honestly. Like I may agree or disagree, but I'm curious to hear what someone like you that is a thinker and has come up with some ideas about electronic music, perhaps on a deeper level. How do you respond to a question like that?
Well, I think electronic music, the way it starts, is a reaction, right? There's a baseball game, I don't know if in the late 70s or when, I think it's a Cubs game, that people burn disco records, which is what is a reaction of taking disco, little time in New York, but mostly in Chicago, and it's an underground, reaction. Hip-hop. The reason why hip-hop exists is because there's no money to buy instruments, so you lay down a record. I think that these are very, deeper, factually you could talk about many other things, but they're all reactions. And when it travels from house music and goes to Detroit and becomes techno, and then drum and bass is born in England, I would imagine, correct? And in France there's some sort of this kind of value, I think is incredible. The way it starts, what it means, what people want out of it, I think the gathering. But what it has become, first of all, one of the most important ways that humans got poetry was through their music. A little understanding of words, one of the things that it has eliminated out of the culture. And yes, you can talk about vocal house and, but still when you hear vocal house, or they will sample Alan Watts, or whatever, it's fantastic. But in a larger sense, I find it as a whole, although the drum and bass culture, from what I gathered from the event that just happened here, it's much more loyal culture and much more down to earth and much more housed in the music itself, whereas the house music culture and the techno culture is drug-fueled, orgiastic masturbation in some sense. and zombie-like creatures floating around with such a drug-fueled. I mean, I've been to many DJ events, and I have had probably 3,000 DJs play here. And I've been to Blue Moon where I've filmed, but I often find, I funnily say, I could be anywhere in the world, and at 4 in the morning, I'm kind of listening. Yes, there's some variations, but I'm kind of listening to the same kind of, rise, drop, rise again. Although drum and bass is relentless. That's like your, it just won't let you go. But I find that that's why we started a podcast, because I wanted to remind people how wide they are musically. That now, at this point of the electronic culture, we have to widen it a bit. And my perspective on it, I really enjoyed the people of the drum and bass that were here the other day. I really felt warm and down to earth. And I would imagine the rave also comes from not so much from the drum and bass, but probably from the techno Detroit days, but also drum and bass. And that gathering, that's the other point, is that people believe that they're gathering in these places, and this is what the world and the earth is all about, and this is how we're going to change it. I'm skeptical that this is all happening. I'm skeptical that what we think we're experiencing is really what we're experiencing as a culture, as a cause for cultural change. Musically, I mean, I'm a rock and roller, and I also have an electronic hybrid band, and we use electronics in our band. But I just find it, like I said, that the poetry is taken out, and I think we need to move forward. We do a show called Journey of a Life Through Music, where I'm trying to remind electronic musicians that you're much wider. Let's broaden the 4x4. Let's broaden this repetitive. Yes, I hear the complexity. I hear the changes, but I think Sting recently said, there's some great music out there and great musicians, but it's gotten so much simpler. There's a simplicity, and the bridge has all but disappeared, and that was our therapy. So I just think that consequentially, without sounding contrarian, we have to have a new movement that is going to break through, because right now it's what I find it's mostly just a localized experience that is not creating any formal change in any way. Go ahead, ask me the question.
No, the reason I was kind of going down this path of asking you these questions in part was because just before I left Santa Cruz, I randomly bumped into a guy who is from Canada, actually, which is where I'm from. He used to throw jungle parties up in Whistler, but he also told me that he used to go to Tulum back in the day and would bring on his backpack like records. And I asked him what records he would bring, and he mentioned like Metalhead's records and Hospital records. And he said back then it was all Goa trance here. It was drum and bass. I don't know if it was like shunned, but it wasn't like necessarily.
I think drum and bass is generally shunned. It's a very, not generally shunned in a bad way. I just think in Tulum it's just such a Tulum and not the house music, techno music now especially, and progressive techno. Is it progressive techno? What's the progressive trance? I don't know which one it is, but it's the other, there's drum and bass, and then there's that other one that just doesn't, it's like relentless music. And I want to know the psychology, the human condition, the human condition that needs this music. Not that it's not incredible. I'm just saying I want to know what is it that we are trying to almost avoid or what are we trying to what are we trying to find through this music? You know, I want to know, because I feel like our lives are so fucked up. You know, the whole world is so hyper normalized. There's got to be something relative to this that the human condition of the subconscious is not understanding. Why? Like, what is it? I mean, I love good music. I mean, you know, and the other day I was dancing behind the bar. I don't know if you were here on the pre-opening party. I mean, and it's incredible, and the people are incredible. But I'm very concerned with the human condition, and what is the reasoning behind. You know, obviously the punk culture. Like I'm his cultural historian, and I look at the punk culture and how young kids need to react, and I think that has something to do with all this stuff. But
so I guess last question. You know, and I know you haven't probably been to maybe the actual shows for Locus Music Festival, but you know, I wonder on what level is it just another club night here versus, you know what I mean? Is there an opportunity there for the organizers? Like, is a platform like that with these kind of more loyal drum and bass fans that do seem to want a sense of community? Is there an opportunity to kind of stand as a counterpoint to some of that boho chicification of Tulum and
that's
whatnot?
the one thing that I got from this event that we did, the pre-party for Locus. The community is fantastic. I mean, I loved this fucking non-boho chic bullshit people that weren't here. I really loved it. And I think that since Ritesh has done this first one, and he comes from the drum and bass place, I think there's certainly an opportunity for people to come and be in paradise and to be a part of it. I think it's fantastic. I think I'm pushing this journey of a life through music on Monday as a coda to be able to do it with Goldie, so that we can have a conversation with Goldie about all of the music that touched his life to become who he became. So we're kind of pushing that notion, and hopefully we'll land it. But yeah, I think of course there's an opportunity for, I don't know if it'll get, drum and bass has always been on the outskirts of electronic music, or has become more on the outskirts, whereas house music and techno are the, forgive me if I'm mistaken, but I think that's true. And I think, will we have cenote parties with drum and bass? I can't tell you, but certainly I'm sure Ritesh will do a festival every year. And you know, drum and bass has its place in electronic music. And obviously you're a big fan of drum and bass, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Why are you a fan of drum and bass? What makes you like this music?
Well, I just did an interview on that table over there earlier, a few minutes ago, and the guy expressed a similar sentiment to me, which is that he said he used to be into punk music, and then when he got into electronic music, similar to what happened with me, is we gravitated towards drum and bass for some reason.
It's a very punk.
You know, I found in a lot of ways it doesn't always live up to what you hope it would be, but you know, that's the same with everything. But in other ways, you know, like especially at this festival, so far anyways, I've found that not all the time, but you know, a good chunk of the time, you could see that yearning for community, and you could see it fulfilled at a deeper level than you do see at a lot of other shows. Now, we're only day 2 of the festival, so I don't want to speak too soon, but you know, I've liked what I've seen, and I'm really happy that I came here. And you know,
do you think we reached this epoch in festivals, and in 4-day festival? I mean, is it just our human condition that is so fucking lonely?
I think it's like anything else. I think the medium is the message.
Ooh, Marshall McLuhan post.
Shout out to
Marshall,
Canadian.
What's up, nigga? Shit.
But
he opens my appropriation film, Marshall McLuhan, actually.
And so, in my opinion, you're given these tools. What will you do with them?
Yeah.
And
what do you carry with you? My biggest thing is, what do you carry with you, and how does it affect your daily life? You know, carry something with you. All this experience and this camaraderie should lead us to vulnerability in our daily life. And if vulnerability is the cushion on which courage sits. And if we can take that with us, rather than it just us swallowing up an experience and then forgetting it, this would warrant a great change in the human condition at its core level. That's when the change will come. And you know, music has a great answer, and I believe in music. I believe in music as the most ephemeral of arts. And no matter what you listen, if you're listening to music, any kind of music, and if you really feel that music, it should get you to your vulnerability. And I hope to God that this festival, from what I gathered, and especially from Ritesh and the people, I hope they carry something further with them. You know, that more than this, the experience and the drugs and the alcohol, they carry the music in their hearts. And Henry Miller used to say, there are no more books to be written, thank God. This then is not a book in the ordinary sense of the word. This is a libel in the face of art, a spit in the eye of God, of love, of what you will. What I'm going to do is sing for you. Now I may sing a little off key, and I will sing nonetheless. And then I will dance on all the dirty dead corpses. So dance, sing, live through yourself, and take that music inside and this camaraderie inside and carry it with you. And I think that with Ritesh heading this up, I think maybe there's a chance, you know, that there'll be something more. And if they can provide you to feel that nothing was taken from you but given to you, then that's a festival success.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh, my guys, all right? Okay, so we made it to this third venue of the festival, Utah Cenote Club. And there's a little bit of light left. Shout out, what's up, homie? Guess I get to learn what a cenote is right at sunset. This is great. You can hear the drum and bass kicking in. Here in the jungle, at a jungle party, you know, listening to jungle. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm gonna go check it out, alright?
Fantastic. What a beautiful location. It's such a pleasure to be here. What's up, brother? Yes. Good to see you too. Big up my US family, my Canadian family, my UK family. We've come an incredibly long way to share this incredible moment, this incredible focus, this wonderful festival outside Ritesh, the full gang. I have my compadre, Mr. Tony Coleman, aka London Electricity, right here and right now. We've got 2 hours to give them some power. Let's go, Tony. hands up high for Electricity, please. It's an honor and a pleasure. Hospital Records, Hospitality,
What's your name, bro? Emmanuel, bro. What's your DJ name? Huh? What's your DJ name? Emmanuel, DJ Magnet. Okay, and what type of music do you do? Music, I'm from Latin House. Latin House, where are you from? I am from Mexico City. Okay, alright.
Chilango,
me, bro. Oh, you work here? Yes.
I work here
Tulum and 2 months. Oh yeah?
Yes.
How is it? Do you like it?
Any which way on loose.
Like me. This is London Electricity, one of the most famous guys out there. Oh yeah. Have you heard of him? This guy's been doing this. He started doing one of the record labels, Hospital Records. It's one of the most famous record labels in drum and bass. Okay. Yeah. Pretty good, right? Yes. Come on. I like me. The party. Oh my God. There you go.
Locus, can you play the keys? Up top, you guys, play the keys. Oh yeah.
Shade your eyes, it's getting bright. Don't look down, I know just get your high.
Sing it if you know.
Bit by bit we'll overcome. I wanna dance to the beat of a different drum.
I've been living with the lights out, get in trouble by the idle sounds of the day to day. I know I let you down, I did nothing to protect you, didn't know how much you went through, and now it's too late. I wish I did more to love you, I wish I did more to keep you safe. If I only could, I built a better world for you.
And that's London Electricity. The man, the myth, the legend himself right now. Everyone loved it.
Remember, don't just listen, you gotta feel.
Pretty much exactly what I hoped for.
Ain't nothing going on but history.
Count this as one satisfied customer.
Numbers, we back for more. Back to hear you roar.
Carnal, no te voy a decir, yo me chingo, vamos a darle porque yo soy de Oaxaca, carnal. Como te lo explico, yo me chingo un perico, ando con toda la bala, yo estoy en el tiro, hey, bro.
Now watch me flip the flow, DJ hits
hits you with the bass. Raver, appraiser, rhythm with the flavor. Free on my phone until love it's nailed to the razor. Razor, size them in two, no one can save you. Anyone calling me transform a broken beat embracer. Razor, drum and bass, let's go, smile and see. This is how we roll to the universal language.
We bring the heart and the flavor. For sure, elevate ya.
Song conclusion, here we go. We got the hang clippers. One love. One hand to the sky, please, everybody. And give it up for the one and only DBridge. Let's go!
Crystallize the sound wave, hear it shatter. Shift particles and rearrange the matter. Rip the bass codes like bombs when they scatter. Isolate the shock wave, letting disintegrate up. Lyrical chemicals troubling your brain state. Ain't always strip rates, made human play shit.